When I first joined Westminster School in September 2023, I was asked to select an extracurricular activity to occupy my Thursday afternoons. Desperate to avoid rowing, netball, hockey, or any sport if I'm really being honest, I frantically scrolled through the drop-down menu until I saw the option Civic Engagement. I selected it and pressed Submit, totally unaware of what I'd gotten myself into. The following day, I received an email asking me to head to St. Stephen's Church, just a 10-minute walk from here, to begin what was soon to become one of the most enlightening and transformative experiences of my life. As soon as I stepped through the doors, I was immediately met with new sensations. Aromatic spices from the hot meal everyone was enjoying, music playing from someone's phone that people were singing along to, laughter that echoed through the nave of the church. But the most important impression that I remember from that moment, and the one that I'm going to be speaking to you about, was community. In this small corner of London, participants, with the support of staff and volunteers, came together every week to share their stories and find connection in their experiences. As I was welcomed into the church, I discovered that the group for which I had suddenly become a volunteer was Support a Survivor of Torture, a charity helping refugees and asylum seekers from Sri Lanka. All of the participants of the group were victims of torture, and many victims of conflict related to sexual violence. Most had arrived in the UK entirely alone, their friends and family still in Sri Lanka, without English and without any kind of support network. As you can imagine, the physical and psychological marks left by these experiences was profound, and not something that could ever be effaced by charity alone. But what Support a Survivor of Torture could do was provide connection between participants, staff, and volunteers that eased the healing process and reminded participants that they were not alone. As one of the group members told me on my first day there, here we have the opportunity to come together and make friends. That day marked the beginning of what would go on to be more than a 2-year journey with the charity, during which time I helped with art sessions, English lessons, and cultural trips around London, getting to know everyone there like family. Despite the traumatic experiences that the participants had endured, my time at Support a Survivor of Torture taught me the power of community as an antidote to the isolation, fear, and uncertainty that so often characterises the lives of refugees and asylum seekers in the UK. As well as providing legal help with the asylum process, Support a Survivor of Torture offers participants the opportunity to process their experiences through weekly art sessions. These involve participants working collaboratively on larger projects, as was the case with this piece, which was produced for the Human Legacy Project, as well as engaging in independent creative work. This piece, entitled 1001 Footprints, reflects the participants' incredibly difficult journeys of migration, escaping war and torture, and leaving behind family and loved ones. The process of creating this piece was extremely healing for the participants. Many described the way in which coming together as a group and working collaboratively through their feelings, although taking place in silence, allowed them to create art side by side. Thus, through this work, participants were able to transform their narratives of suffering into stories of solidarity, survival, and resilience. The process of making art independently is similarly therapeutic for the participants. For those who have experienced trauma, there is often a deep anxiety around getting things wrong or making mistakes. But art resists this entirely. In art, there is no perfection. The only aim is expressing one's voice. As a result, participants are able to put aside their worries, even if just for a few hours every week, to engage freely in the creative process. As the art teacher of the group explained to me during my time at the charity, there is something about the act of torture that fractures and fragments the self, and something about the process of art that helps to heal and integrate it. Through carefully planned lessons, making use of different techniques, mediums, and materials, participants were not only able to rediscover a sense of agency in their self-expression, but also share this voice with others. By displaying their artwork, participants were able to see each other's interiority made exterior, and so better understand one another's circumstances. Another important way that participants were able to develop a voice at Support a Survivor of Torture was through the English language. For many of the participants who had never before left Sri Lanka, their arrival in the UK was marked by isolation and loneliness. Studies show that refugees who are unable to speak English are at the highest risk of exclusion, since without the ability to communicate, it is very difficult to build friendships and deal with the practicalities of living in a new country. Through English lessons offered by the charity, participants are taught not only the necessary vocabulary for adapting to life in a new country, for example, medical language for describing symptoms, arranging GP appointments, and dealing with emergencies, but also for communicating their experiences. Language lessons were often based around expression both in English and Tamil, and consisted of sharing folklore, playing word games, and writing poems, some of which were even translated and published in the Tamil Guardian. These poems were written in response to single-word prompts and explored themes of grief, suffering, and the anxieties that come with being an asylum seeker, with many expressing a great fear of being forced to return to Sri Lanka, given the case that their asylum applications were denied. However, sharing these feelings through speaking and writing provided the participants with a sense of solace, since they came to understand that they were not at all alone in their fears. Beyond art and English lessons that allowed for greater self-expression and understanding among the group, participants were also able to grow closer to one another through day trips in London. These included excursions to the British Museum, the Museum of the Home in Hackney, Greenwich Park, Spitalfields Farm, Kew Gardens, and Chelsea Botanical Gardens, giving survivors, staff, and volunteers the opportunity to connect outside of the regular Thursday meetings. For many participants who spent most of their week alone and often disturbed by unwanted thoughts and feelings, these trips really served as a vital form of emotional respite. These days out also allowed for participants to become immersed in a community beyond the one at St. Stephen's Church, that is, the London community. By visiting cultural landmarks, travelling by public transport, and getting to meet new people, participants were able to better familiarise themselves with their city. For many who lacked the means to travel around London independently, these trips provided participants with the confidence to begin exploring their new city. I hope from what I have described that you can understand how crucial access to a supportive, stable, and welcoming community is for these survivors. Experiencing torture is one of the most traumatic things that a person can go through. Many members report being abducted, blindfolded, and kept in holding cells for sometimes days on end, leaving them depressed and oftentimes suicidal. However, through the connections that participants are able to develop at the charity, they come to realise that they are not alone in their experiences. Having the chance to just sit in the company of other participants, as well as staff and volunteers who understand their circumstances without explanation, is one of the most valuable aspects of Support a Survivor of Torture, and is perhaps the reason for so many of the success stories that have emerged since. Participants describe the way in which the support network at the charity has given them the confidence to take up new pursuits in the UK. Some have gone on to study at university after winning scholarships. Others have qualified as teachers, and there are even those who have become business owners and now help to fund the weekly lunches at the church. Through the community developed at Support a Survivor of Torture, participants are given the practical and emotional support to begin their lives anew and start to heal from the trauma of their pasts. During my 2 years at Support a Survivor of Torture, I learned more than I could have ever imagined. When I started my journey there in 2023, I had assumed that it would consist of me helping the participants. And while that did happen, I gained so much as a volunteer. Not only did I get to hear people's stories, help them through the healing process, and even pick up some Tamil, but most importantly, I had the privilege of being part of a community. I came to learn how important connection is, not only for the participants, but for staff, other volunteers, and me. I was incredibly lucky to be a part of the community at Support a Survivor of Torture and to have maintained contact with members of the group to this day. We're now 3 years on from that moment when I scrolled past rowing, netball, and hockey on that form and chose to volunteer instead. The moment that was perhaps the best decision of my life.